The Green Futures of Tycho by William Sleator, 10. Back behind the oak tree, he jumped for home and arrived 1 minute after he had left. He got upstairs without incident and crawled, exhausted, into bed. He dreamed vividly of people flying through the air, controlled by a horrible, bleating voice that would not shut up. He brooded at school the next day, unable to concentrate on anything but the future he had seen. Several teachers chided him for not paying attention. When he got home, he went up to his room and closed the door, hoping to avoid everyone in his family. How naive he had been to think that a glimpse at the future would be an innocuous little game. Perhaps it would have been if his future were different. As it was, the trip ahead in time had left him more depressed than anything that had ever happened to him before. How had he turned out that way? Foolishly dressed, physically unattractive, blatantly and pitifully craving the attention and approval which the audience, seeing through him, did not want to give. Worst of all, he had been so childishly nasty to his own sister, delighting in her embarrassment, even preventing the audience from hearing her name. Certainly, Lunar Entertainments would be a fascinating career, but the fact that he was so obviously ruined all his pleasure in it. That he should turn out like that was unthinkable, impossible, and yet at the same time, hideously unavoidable. It was locked into the future. No matter what he did, that was how it was going to be. He felt like giving up right now, just drifting off and forgetting everything. There was a knock on the door. Usually no one knocked. Even when they did, they would come barging in right away anyway, without wanting a response. This time there was only a knock, unexpectedly, unprepared for such politeness. Tycho said nothing. His eyes closed until the knock came again, hesitantly, and he said, "Come in." It was Leonardo. "Oh, hi, Leo," Tycho said, looking up at him. Desultorily from bed. What was his brother up to now? Leonardo twisted his pudgy hands together nervously. He didn't seem to know where to look. "Well, Tycho, I just thought I should tell you. I don't know why I'm doing this, but Ludwig, well, he keeps saying these funny things about you, making hints. He swears he's going to catch you sooner or later." "Catch me?" Tycho sat up quickly, the threat knocking all the grogginess out of him. "What's that supposed to mean?" He rubbed his eyes. "Come in, Leo, and close the door." Leonardo pushed the door shut and approached the bed. "I'm not sure what he means. He's vague about it. Like it's a secret that he doesn't want to share until he knows more. But he still wants to make everybody else suspicious, including Bobby and Judy." Tycho had to think hard. What had he given away? What precautions had he forgotten to take? At all costs, the egg must be guarded and protected. If anyone else knew about it, he was lost. "I don't know what you mean, Leo," he said calmly. "Give me an example, something specific. Then maybe I'll know what he's driving at." Leonardo pulled out the desk chair and sank down heavily. Plump was really an understatement for him. He was on the verge of being obese. When had he put on all that extra weight? It was odd that Tycho hadn't noticed it until now. "Well," he said, Leonardo began. Then he looked back uncomfortably at the door. What was wrong with him? Tycho had never known him to be so timid. Leonardo's obsequious manner combined with Tycho's own nervous curiosity made Tycho irritable. "Are you deaf or something, Leo? I bet they can hear him banging out that stupid etude on the next block. Listen, he's going to make that same mistake again." They waited. "See, I knew he would. Come on, Leo, he can't break in on us. And if anybody else does, I'll protect you," he added sarcastically. "Well, after school we were having a snack in the kitchen, apples and candy bars. He told me and Tamara and Judy that he heard you sneak up and down the stairs late last night. First, you disappeared all day Saturday, and then you locked yourself in the bathroom Saturday night. And now you're sneaking around the house early in the morning and late at night, when everyone else is in bed. You never did that before." "I was hungry. I went down to get a snack." "You, of all people, should understand that." "Well, you don't have to get mad and start insulting me," said Leonardo petulantly, putting his hand to his chest. "I'm just trying to help you." "I'm not mad, Leo." "But is that all Ludwig says? Come on, get it out. We don't have much time." "No, he said you had something special, like a secret tool or an experiment that you would only do when nobody else was around. And it wasn't safe. You might set the house on fire or something. And Judy said, why don't you just ask him about it? And he said he did, but you lied about it. He said he was going to catch you and get it away from you before you did something dangerous and somebody got hurt. What did Judy say then? She told him to stop worrying about you and go practice. And he said he would prove he was right. For a moment, they just watched each other, while muffled waves of the revolutionary etude rolled and trembled from downstairs. Then Tycho said, why are you telling me this? Why not just go along with him? Well, Leonardo looked away, flipping papers on the desk. I don't know if he's right or not, but I thought maybe if he was right, and you did have a secret game or something, and I helped you out and warned you, then maybe you would share it with me? So that was it. Naturally, Leonardo wasn't doing this just to help him out. He was doing it for a reward, and to be one up on Ludwig. But perhaps Ludwig's suspicions were not all bad after all. Perhaps he could even use them to his own advantage. Well, Leo, Tycho said slowly, thanks for telling me. It really helps a lot, but I'm afraid Ludwig's a little bit mixed up. You mean there isn't anything? Leonardo said with real disappointment. Then he went on earnestly. Please tell me the truth, Tycho. You can trust me, I promise. I didn't say there wasn't anything. I just said Ludwig is a little mixed up. Tycho stood and paced briefly, his hands in his pockets, prolonging the suspense. It also gave him a chance to touch the egg, just to be sure it was safe. Abruptly, he turned to face Leonardo, because yes, there is something, but it's not a game. It's not an object or a thing. It was very important to get that untruth across. It's more like a power. Oh, come on, Tycho, Leonardo said crossly. You don't expect me to believe that, do you? I'm only going to help you if you tell me the truth. But it is the truth, Tycho said fervently, and I can prove it. It takes a lot of practice, but with this power, I can tell the future. Cut it out, Tycho, said Leonardo, sounding really disgusted now. But it's true, Tycho insisted. Listen, Leo, if I told you what was going to happen at supper tonight, and what people were going to say, and it was right, would you believe me then? Sure I would, Leonardo shrugged skeptically. If it was right, and if it was detailed enough, not just some fortune-teller's trick. And if it is, will you help me out and be on my side and keep tabs on Ludwig for me? I guess so, if he'll teach me how to do it too. It's a deal, Tycho said. Then he became aware that the music had stopped. It couldn't have been better timed. You better get out of here in case Ludwig comes up. I'll be up to your room in a little while and tell you what's going to happen tonight, and then we'll see what we shall see. Leonardo left quickly, and Tycho sat down at the desk and opened a book. He waited until he heard Ludwig coming upstairs, pause by his door, and then go into his own room. Quickly, he adjusted the dials and jumped ahead 2 hours. He went and stood at the top of the stairs and listened for 10 minutes, then went back to his room and returned 30 seconds after he had left. Half an hour later, he went up to Leonardo's room on the 3rd floor. Leonardo was working on the cafeteria section of his junior high school mural. A long line of students in brightly colored outfits snaked along the wall, ending at a counter where fat, grinning ladies stood behind vats of spaghetti sauce and fried chicken. His tongue between his teeth, Leonardo was just putting the finishing touches on a gleaming case of luscious chocolate pies. Okay, Tycho said, his voice bland and matter-of-fact. Tonight we're going to have leftover stew disguised as meat pie and chocolate souffle for dessert. That doesn't prove anything, Leonardo said. You could always just ask. Wait a minute, Tycho said, holding up his hand, completely in control. Let me finish. Bobby will complain that the pie is too salty and the crust is soggy. Then the souffle won't rise. It will just be a gooey mess and we'll have to drown it in whipped cream. But it will taste good anyway. Judy will say we're lucky she cooked anything at all because she's had so many patients today. Then Bobby will tell about one of his patients who's a kleptomaniac and can't stop shoplifting. Yesterday, she stole a 15-pound turkey from the supermarket. The patient wrote Bobby a check for $100, which Bobby will return only if the patient doesn't steal anything for a month. Then Tamara will brag about how she did 32 perfect fouettes to the left, on point, and the whole class applauded. And Ludwig will say, too bad you didn't get a videotape since you'll never do it again. And Judy will say, what's the matter with you, Ludwig? You've been out of sorts all day. And Ludwig will say, nothing is the matter. That I'm the one who's been acting strange recently. Tycho paused. And then Leo, you will stick up for me. Leonardo stared at Tycho for a moment. Then he pursed his lips and lifted his eyebrows. All right, Tycho, he said. We'll see. We sure will, Tycho said. It was wonderful to watch Leonardo's face at the table that evening. His theatrical expression of disdain at the beginning of the meal gave way to absolute open-mouthed shock when the little scene began to play itself out. At first, he couldn't keep his eyes from Tycho's. Then, as the scene went on in perfect detail, his face grew pale and he kept looking down at his plate, embarrassed and afraid. He was so upset that he didn't finish his souffle. After Ludwig made his accusation, Leonardo said with trembling sincerity, "I think you're imagining things, Ludwig. Tycho's just the same as he always was. I think you're the one with something to hide." The feeling of power that rose within Tycho as he watched it all unfold was intoxicating. All he had to do was flip a few little dials, and his family would behave just as he wished. There was nothing he wouldn't be able to do now, no problem he couldn't solve. When Leonardo approached him later, his manner was fawning and abject. "Tycho, that was amazing. That was incredible," he said, slowly shaking his head. "I can still hardly believe it, but I have to believe it. Can you really show me how to do it too?" "Sure," said Tycho casually, "but first you have to prove you really are on my side. Keep tabs on Ludwig, tell me everything he says about me, and keep throwing in those remarks about how he's imagining things. Then we'll see how much I can teach you." But the heady sensation of total command lasted only until he undressed for bed and took a good look at the egg. He dropped it as though it were red hot, the elation vanishing like a popped balloon. The egg had metamorphosed again. There was an ominous feeling in the pit of his stomach as he examined it. The green end was more jewel-like than before, with a richer, warmer glow. It had a mysterious underwater quality now that was quite hypnotic. He felt that if he stared into it long enough, he could see dim shapes moving deep within the jewel, far, far away, and around the middle there were two glittering filaments, one silver and the other red. Clearly there were powers at work here, one over which he had no control at all. He was not in command. The bleakness of the future he had glimpsed that night before came flooding back in a rush. But maybe it wasn't hopeless after all. He hadn't seen very much of the future. It was very likely that he had stumbled upon himself during an off moment. Perhaps if he went back and got a fuller picture, it wouldn't be so bad after all. Still, something urged him to stay away from the future. But once the idea of going back and checking it out more thoroughly occurred to him, he could not get rid of it. And what harm could he do? He had already been there, and this was basically a positive mission to look for the good things. It was only fair. He owed it to himself. He had been there from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. All he had to do was arrive at 2:30 on the same day to avoid running into himself. And he didn't even have to make Ludwig more suspicious by sneaking outside again. He knew that his room would be unoccupied and basically unchanged. He could make the jump without even getting out of bed. He put on the same traveling clothes. He carefully set the dials. He lay down in bed, pressed down the jewel, and felt faint. Then he jumped into the future, 19 years, 364 days, and 15 and 1/2 hours exactly, and landed painfully on the floor. "Huh?" he said aloud, opening his eyes, and then, with a terrified cry, he was on his feet, peering around frantically in all directions. It wasn't only that his bed had been moved, the room and the hallway beyond were utterly different. And that's the end of chapter 10.